Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 7 of the Ad Nauseam podcast. What you just heard was a clip from the 2004 epic film by Wolfgang Petersen, Troy, which is our topic for today. As always, my name is Jeff Winkle, and I am here with my co-host, David Noe. How you doing, Dave?
Doing very well, Jeff. The question is there no one else?
Is there no one else?
You mean to review this movie?
I wish there was somebody else to review this movie.
I think it's left to us.
Right. Is there no one else to do a better British accent?
Probably not.
Probably not. But yeah, so we're going to tackle Troy and all of its ins and outs today. But before we get into that, do we got some shout-outs to the people out there?
Yeah, we do. I want to say hello to our friend Chuck Meether, who's listening to us somewhere in the wilds of Iowa. And a young man named Ben Franks. I actually don't know his precise age, but he's a big fan of the podcast, I hear, and like all of our great fans, left us a nice review at one important spot. So if you're listening, thanks so much for your support.
Yes, thank you very, very much. Is Ben out in the wilds of Iowa too?
No, I think he's in Michigan somewhere.
Oh, Michigan somewhere, okay.
Actually, he has my table. He has a dining room table of mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he does.
Does he need to return that?
That's what we're hoping.
All right. Well, hey, before we get into the topic of the day, let's talk a little bit about what we're going to cover next week.
Yeah. So what are we going to cover next week?
We're going to talk about some Ovid. Is that
yes?
Is that
I think
correct?
we should pick up a little bit of Ovid. We're going to move away from the Greeks for a bit and try to speak to our Roman-loving audience. So we're going to talk about Ovid's Amores. What's love got to do with it?
Yes. Ooh.
Yeah. Book 1, Poem 1, and his Recusatio. I'm not going to write no epic, he says. Of course, he goes on to do that. But first, we're going to look at some love poetry from Ovid next week.
Excellent. And it's also, apparently, it's going to get gritty, too, at some point.
Quite gritty.
All right. Excellent. I look forward to it. For my notes here, I see that you came across another nauseous Latin word for us.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
This is from Cicero's correspondence, one of his letters to his BFF Atticus. And the word is nauseola. Nauseola. It's a noun. It's diminutive, which means to get a little bit squeamish, to have a little squeamishness.
Interesting.
Yeah, so this is the kind of feeling that our audience has when they first push play, right? And then a little bit of nauseola comes over them.
Yes, exactly. Right. It's subtle.
It's subtle.
But it's there.
You can perceive it for sure.
Right. So Cicero used that word right into his BFF.
That's right,
Atticus. Yeah, excellent. Hey, let's get into it.
All right. So, Jeff, we have an opening quote today, don't we?
I think we do. I think
this is from?
I think you should read it.
Should I read that?
Yeah, I think that you're the classic rock guy.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is from Led Zeppelin's album Mothership, 1975. The song is Achilles' Last Stand.
Which I would argue, by that point, I think the Zepp is on the downslide.
You think so?
Well, I know people would disagree with me there, but that's neither here nor there.
When I was researching this song a little bit, what I learned was that apparently John Bonham's drums were the main instrument for the whole of it.
Is that right?
That's the consensus opinion. But here's the quote. Wandering and wandering, what place to rest the search? The mighty arms of Atlas hold the heavens from the earth. For the mighty arms of Atlas hold the heavens from the earth. From the earth.
There's a whole lot more about Atlas than Achilles.
Well, that's okay.
That's right. Well, I got to say, your dulcet tone's much more soothing than the screech of Robert Plant.
Oh,
so
thanks.
I appreciated that.
Yeah, there's a plant in my office whose nickname is Bobby. Yeah, we call him Bobby because it's Robert Plant. Yeah,
that's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, so quick disclaimer for our audience. We've tried to be very ecumenical here in our outreach.
Yeah.
We want everyone to listen to the podcast who can, so we've tried to keep it pretty clean. And so just a little disclaimer, Troy is a movie that's rated R. So if you're listening and you are of tender years, you might want to just, use a little bit of discretion before you dive right into it.
Exactly, right. And there's going to be a ton of spoilers along the way.
That's right.
But this film came out in 2004, so...
Yes, a couple decades ago.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you haven't seen it by now, I mean, it's on you.
That's right.
Exactly. But if you haven't seen it, just a warning, right? All right, let's talk Troy. We both watched it, I believe, years ago when it came out.
Yeah.
And I think there was a long gap of time for both of us where we went back to watch it again. Mm-hmm. And what was your kind of reaction, looking at your both of your viewings of it?
Well, I had very high hopes when I first saw it in 2005. I don't think I saw it in the theater, but I watched it on, I don't know what the format was, laser disc or VHS, something like that, back in 2005. 8-track, and I had very high expectations because it was only a few years after Gladiator.
Right, and you liked Gladiator.
I loved Gladiator.
Yes, right.
It's the only movie I have seen in the theater more than twice.
Is that right?
I saw it 4 times.
Wow.
I was a young grad student with a lot of money to burn.
Okay, we need to come back to this for another episode.
I loved Gladiator. I thought it was a really good movie, and so expectations for Troy were high. And at the time, I came away pretty disappointed.
Yeah.
Thinking it just doesn't have the same zip, the same zing, the same zazonga.
It was definitely lacking zazonga. I'd agree with that, yeah. No, I had a similar kind of reaction over here to the vomitorium. Like I was telling you that the second viewing, I thought it was better than I remembered it. Yeah. I think it's still lacking something. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we'll be able to put our finger on that in this episode, but it's definitely missing something that prevents it from being a great movie. All right, so let's set the stage here and hear from Wolfgang Petersen, the director himself, on kind of what the Iliad meant to him growing up.
I knew the Iliad from when I was a student in Hamburg in Germany. I learned at school ancient Greek. I could write it and read it, so we read it. We were forced to read it, and I loved it.
All right, so he said, growing up as a child in Hamburg, he was forced to read it.
He was.
And he loved it.
Loved it.
And from that point on, like Schliemann, it became his lifelong, well, he didn't say that, but should have been his lifelong ambition to put it on screen.
Put it on screen, right. He didn't go full Schliemann.
No.
But he loved the Iliad, was forced to read it.
That's right. And then a young Hollywood writer, later went on to Game of Thrones fame, David Benioff.
Benioff, right.
Yeah, came to him and said, I've got this great screenplay on the Iliad, and I want to see it on the screen.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Benioff said when he first came to Petersen was that he didn't want to have the gods in the movie too much.
Right, that's right.
And the idea is that Petersen says they're hard to put on the screen. How are you going to dress a god? He even, I think, says that it'd be ridiculous. Audience wouldn't go for it.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that from Petersen before. I always thought it was a much more of a kind of a stylistic choice.
Right.
I suppose it was, but didn't think that the audience would go for it. I suppose so. I mean, if you look at all the dozens of Odysseys that have been on screen. They're littered with the gods.
Yes, they are. A very memorable one is Hallmark series on the Odyssey back in the mid-'90s, where Isabella Rossellini, a beautiful Italian actress, plays Athena.
And Armand Assante in the lead role.
Very compellingly. I didn't see any problem with including the gods, but both Petersen and Benioff said, no, we can't put the gods on the screen. It's just not going to work.
What did you think of that choice?
I don't like it, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, I would say that in this movie there were absolutely more Bods than gods.
There are way more Bods than gods.
Right. So we see lots of shots of Brad Pitt, without a shirt, and Eric Bana, and the female leads, in various states of dress and undress.
Yes.
Is it that ridiculous to put an Athena?
That's a good point.
It takes more imagination.
Right.
But come on, you're filmmakers.
Yes.
Right.
I guess. One of the things I think I liked about it is I think it put more of the onus of the tragedy on the human characters.
Yes.
So the Trojans are depicted as much more religiously correct,
which is un-Homeric.
It's not Homeric, right?
No, not at all.
No.
So Petersen says yes, the religion's a part of it. This is something anyone can watch on YouTube if they want to. Behind the scenes of the making of Troy, interviews with the writer, the director, and various actors, and he says the religion is there, the characters are religious, but we're not going to show the gods.
Right. Yeah.
It's a choice I didn't like, but that's how it goes, I guess.
In some ways it makes kind of a more gritty kind of human drama than a more kind of supernatural... Homeric, I suppose. So Benioff said something like, when it came down to a choice between, being true to Homer or being what's best for the movie. He chose what's best for the movie.
Why don't we roll that clip?
Okay.
Let our listeners hear it out of the horse's mouth, so to speak, from Benioff exactly.
Let's do it.
From the first time I pitched this story, I didn't want to tell just the Iliad section of the story. I wanted to tell the entire Trojan War. So starting from before Paris' seduction of Helen and going through to the fall of Troy. And these were elements that I felt needed to be in the movie. We didn't want to stop the movie midway through. We felt that wouldn't be very satisfying. And, you know, as a result of that, many things had to be cut. And the principal one is the gods.
So that's very interesting, isn't it, Jeff?
Yeah, it is.
True to the material or what's good for the movie.
Right. I mean, one of the things that on this second viewing I came away with is, I mean, it's the cliche, the book is better than the movie. Right.
Oh, when it's Homer, that's going to be true of any movie.
Of course, right. And of course, this is the movie is not Homer.
Right.
It's not called the Iliad. It's Troy.
Different genre.
Yeah. But it struck me as kind of the limitations of film in kind of teasing out the nuance.
But isn't that the opposite of what most people think? They think that film has no limitations.
Right.
Literature is limited because you have to come up with all the pictures on your own in your mind.
Right.
But film is unlimited.
Yeah.
I think that's most people's understanding of the difference in the genres.
Right. And I think that's largely backwards.
Oh, really?
I do.
Maybe that's for another episode.
Yeah.
So this decision on the part of Benioff to include everything, because he also says we didn't want to just tell the story of the Iliad itself, which, as we've said before, is about 51 days in the 9th year of the war. He wants to show the whole thing.
Yeah.
So there's a scene where they show Paris and Hector leaving Sparta, and of course, Diane Kruger, Helen, is stowed below the deck.
Yes.
And there's an exchange here. And this decision on the part of Benioff to include everything means that not only is there what happened in Sparta, which is not part of the original.
Right.
There's the horse. Mm-hmm. There's the death of Achilles.
Right.
I think they threw in the kitchen sink at one point that got a cameo appearance.
The sink itself.
The sink.
Yeah.
The sink found the work draining, actually.
Ooh. Brutal.
Maybe you should pick it up here, Jeff.
As you're talking, and I'm thinking about it, I kind of like the choice of not having the gods there.
Really?
Yeah. It makes it more tragic in some ways. That Priam is depicted as very loyal to Apollo. Lots of talk about Apollo.
Yeah.
And
but Apollo never appears.
And Priam he's loyal to Apollo to the very end, and he ends up dying. Possibly on the floor of the temple.
Yeah,
right.
But Achilles is presented as almost a proto-atheist. I don't know if you picked that up.
Yeah.
If the gods are so great, Briseis, a character we must talk about. If the gods are so great, Briseis, why don't they rescue you now?
Right.
Because Briseis, the character of Rose Byrne, I think is the actress,
yes,
remains loyal to Apollo through all of this, and Achilles is dismissive of her faith.
That's right. And Achilles can chop off the head of Apollo's statue with no repercussions whatsoever.
That's right.
The sacking scene, the Greeks are pulling down the statues of the gods and they're crumbling in the Trojan temple without any kind of foreshadowing of, in the Greek tradition, is that that's the moment where the gods turn on the Greeks.
That's right.
And they have so much trouble getting home if they get home at all.
That's right.
Right.
And there's this great description in Virgil Book 2 of Poseidon taking his giant trident and overturning the walls of Troy from their foundations, the very walls that he had built.
Yes. Yeah.
So the Greeks get their comeuppance, but not in this movie.
Right. That would have been a great scene. CGI.
Yeah,
Poseidon.
But of course, like you just said, you're happy that there are more Bods than gods. We can't
for the
put
most
that
part.
in the movie, Jeff.
I'm just.
Your true un-Homeric spirit has been revealed here in episode 7. It's making me a little nauseous.
I think if you're gonna make those choices, what's better for the movie rather than going to the tradition, just run with it.
Okay.
And make it its own thing. I think if they had included all the gods, even though it's not a great film, I think it would have been even more easily shelved away with just another one of these sword and sandals films that Hollywood's been producing since the 30s or 40s.
Put the Kraken in, a little Norse mythology, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Why not? Throw it in. Right.
So the decision to put everything in
yes.
means that they made some different choices as to how the plot is driven.
Yes.
And early on, we see Agamemnon and Achilles in the tent of Agamemnon, and this is the moment where Briseis is stolen away from Achilles.
Yes.
So those of you who have been faithfully listening to the podcast know that we covered this in episode 2 when we talked about the general plot structure of the epic. And the character of Briseis in this movie is a combination really of several different persons from the Iliad.
Yes, exactly. So she's She's got a little bit of Cassandra
Definitely.
in her.
Cassandra, the priestess of Apollo.
Yes.
Always telling the truth, a Trojan, and never listened to.
Right. That's her famous, very Greeky curse
That's right.
about her.
And so Briseis in this movie, right?
Yes.
Rose Byrne is a priestess of Apollo.
But she's also a part of the Trojan royal family.
Part of the Trojan royal family. Not elements of the Iliad at all.
No.
Briseis has very little backstory
Right.
in the Iliad.
You see, lots of these changes, I think, that struck me as, it's a long film. It's 2 hours and 42 minutes,
Yeah.
the cut runtime.
It was hard work to get through.
Exactly, and so you have to kind of shave things off the edges. Otherwise, it's almost an unmanageable story
Right.
in 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Well, when you put the kitchen sink in it, but if you just follow the outlines of Homer, maybe you can do it.
So you would have been happier if they had made a film just
I don't know.
the Iliad.
Maybe,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's be true to the material.
Right, yeah.
So they're in the tent. Achilles
Yes.
and Agamemnon are
Right.
in the tent. It's the day after they storm the beach. And Agamemnon, played by Brian Cox,
Yes.
Shakespearean actor, apparently.
As I understand.
Boy,
yeah.
he has a commanding voice, doesn't he?
He does.
Very nice. I wonder if we could get him to guest host.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Or at least do another intro for us.
Yeah, and so when Achilles is landing on the beach, all the ships are coming in. Agamemnon says to Menelaus, as they call him in the movie,
Yes.
the man wants to die, as Brad Pitt storms the beach.
Right.
Then they get hauled into the tent, and Achilles is supposed to feel a sense of awe at Agamemnon's accomplishments. Let's roll that clip so the listeners can hear about this exchange between the two of them right before Briseis is taken away.
A great victory was won today. But that victory is not yours. Kings did not kneel to Achilles. Kings did not pay homage to Achilles.
Perhaps the kings were too far behind to see. The soldiers won the battle.
History remembers kings, not soldiers.
All right, so what did you think of that scene?
Well, it's got a lot of drama.
Yeah.
I really like the way Achilles says something like, no quarrel with you brothers, right, to the guards there, but if you don't take your hands off her, you'll be dead.
Right, exactly.
This is the place where Athena intervenes.
Right, where she grabs
in the
Achilles
original
by the hair.
Grabs Achilles by his hair, and let's be honest. Brad Pitt has a lot of hair, right?
Lots of hair. Yes.
So, in fact, one of my family members, when they saw me watching the movie, said, "What is this? A shampoo commercial?"
That's pretty good.
I said, "No, this is not shampoo. This is real poo."
And he clearly had access to some pomade.
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
That's an impressive character.
Yes.
Impressive character.
But you're right. This is the point in the Iliad where Athena grabs him by the hair and stops him from drawing a sword and gutting Agamemnon on the spot.
Right.
Right.
Yes. But here that doesn't happen like that. In fact, it's the character of Briseis who says, "No more killing for my sake."
Right.
No more killing.
And that's the kind of, and that becomes her role throughout the film. She's
It
kind of
does.
this peacemaker, voice of reason.
And it strikes me how un-Homeric that is
Yes,
as well.
exactly.
Because if we compare this to the latter books of the Odyssey, Penelope is there saying, "More killing, more killing."
Yes.
Come on, Odysseus, more killing.
Right.
So I think that a Homeric woman, right, wants the killing of her enemies as much as a Homeric man.
Exactly. But here's where Benioff says we got to serve the film. We got to serve our audience.
Okay.
Right. And so you have to have kind of the I think a stronger, more reasonable female voice, and then you also know by the time you get to the end of the film, a lot of the bad guys get their comeuppance.
That's true.
Right.
So she's the voice of moderation.
Yes.
I think I like the more ferocious spirit of some of the original characters better. But
Yeah.
that's going to be my song and dance throughout this episode.
Right.
Obviously.
We need to see a more faithful treatment of
Right.
the Iliad on screen. It'd be interesting.
Right.
What would that look like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Kind of a modern audience handle the very different kinds of portrayals, but I think particularly
doubt
for the
it.
female characters, right?
I doubt it, because whenever I discuss these kinds of things with students and others, I talk about, it happened recently in class, I talk about the concept of retributive justice, which is really important in Homer. This is why all the suitors get killed at the end. The maids get hung. I'm talking about the Odyssey,
Yes.
not the Iliad. It's because there's retribution. And it's a pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Distasteful
Yeah.
Portrayal of justice for most contemporary audiences.
Exactly. Yeah.
There is some in this movie, right? There is some in this movie. So we go on from here, the scene in the tent.
Yes.
Achilles retreats from the battlefield.
Right.
Do we have anything like the embassy of Book 9?
Not really. I think Odysseus goes over there he's kind of waiting outside Achilles' tent.
You're talking about Boromir?
Boromir, right?
Right.
I was Sean Bean.
Sean Bean.
Yes.
Also plays the antagonist in an early Tom Clancy movie with Harrison Ford.
Is that Air Force One?
No, it's Patriot Games.
Oh, really?
I think Sean Bean is an Irishman. You know, I don't know if we have any listeners in Ireland. Hopefully, we're going to open a branch office there, aren't we? Soon for Ad Nauseam.
I think so. Yeah.
But if Sean Bean is not an Irishman, our apologies to the Irish. But he's in that movie Patriot Games. He's the antagonist.
Yeah.
Later on, he is in, as we all remember, The Lord of the Rings.
Right.
He's Boromir.
Right.
A little less hair here in Troy.
Yeah.
If memory serves, but a decent Odysseus.
Yes, I liked him.
You did?
I mean, he kind of shows up, and I mean, he provides the voiceover at the beginning, at the end. I thought
That's right.
Interesting. So the first words that you hear are those of Odysseus,
right.
which I thought is, yeah.
Well, they're thinking about a sequel, obviously, by making, which never happened.
No.
I guess the sequel would be Ithaca. I don't know. Something like that.
Right, yeah. I didn't. That's interesting. I bet you're probably right.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking more like where you choose for your voiceover guy, the guy who's good with words in the story.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's not Achilles, it's
That's
Achilles'
right.
story in some ways, but
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, this is borne out by the fact that early in the film, just to step back from the tent scene we just discussed, Odysseus goes to Achilles' home, Larissa, and recruits him. And Achilles makes some comment like, use your tricks on others, don't use them on me.
Right.
And Odysseus says, we all play with the toys the gods have given us. You've got strength, I have words. That was true to the Homeric representation and characterization of Odysseus.
Right.
So I'm fine with that.
Right. And I also, in terms of a Homeric spirit, I was worried that Odysseus would be portrayed as a softer kind of character.
Right.
He's more likable, he's more winsome, which he is, but we do see him committing, acts of wartime brutality on the battlefield within the city walls of Troy.
He didn't have a lot of that, though, in the movie. He didn't have his aristeia, I don't think.
Yeah, a clip here and there.
Right.
Right. But I thought Bean did a good job with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All things being equal.
The draining one and now that. Wow.
So there's no embassy, of course, but he does have a little chat outside the tent about, aren't you coming back to battle? And, Achilles says, no, I think he's eating an apple or something like that.
Yeah, exactly, right.
It's definitely low-key,
Yes.
not like the very significant and extended pageantry of the Iliad itself, Book 9.
Yeah. Now, this is a complete sidetrack, but did you notice there was quite a bit of whittling in the film?
I did notice that.
Yes.
On the boats and so forth?
I think we see Hector whittling.
Yes, he does.
And then Odysseus gets the idea for the Trojan horse when one of his men is whittling a little horse for his boy.
Yes, that's right.
Exactly.
I'm not subtle enough to pick up on that.
Yeah. I don't know if the Greeks were great whittlers.
Right.
Another thing, too, this is completely irrelevant, but did you happen to watch the movie with the subtitles on?
Yes.
You did?
I did.
Did you notice that they'll give the sound effects, man grunting or man shouting. When the chariot wheels are moving and nobody else is talking, it says whickering.
Whickering.
I had not heard that before, but I like that. So we got whickering and we got whittling.
Huh.
Yeah.
Is that all you have, Jeff?
I'm not going to go anywhere else with
next?
that. I have in my notes that I had to bring that up.
Whickering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then we get Patroclus, right?
Yes, who I did not like.
And I also don't know who he is.
No, but I thought he was too young.
Okay.
And he struck me as like he walked off the set of an after-school special.
Kind of like an Anakin Skywalker kind of guy. Who's that actor, the Canadian
fellow?
Hayden Christensen?
Yes,
I
think. Very, very wooden.
I think he was supposed to be smoldery, but he was just mostly forgettable.
No, he wasn't smoldery. He wasn't beardy.
No.
I thought, when he puts on Achilles' armor and goes back out to the battle, which is from the Iliad, it's not believable at all that he would step toe to toe with Hector in any kind of way, right? I thought that was a bad miscast role. Yeah.
Dispatched pretty quickly.
Yeah.
He gets his own pyre, right? Elevated up on top of the pyre and set on fire by Achilles and so forth. And now Achilles is coming back to war.
Right.
So now he drives his chariot in a very iconic and compelling scene. I like the way this was filmed. I think some of this was done in Malta, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had meant to look into some of the other filming locations. Where else did you read that they filmed?
Well, I see they filmed in Morocco.
Yeah.
And the walls of Troy, that set was actually built in Mexico at Cabo San Lucas.
Cabo San Lucas.
That's right. Of Sammy Hagar fame.
Right. So he's Cabo Wabo from the OU812 album.
Yeah, it's one of his special drinks, right? It's some kind of a margarita or something?
Tequila. He's got his own tequila, right?
Yeah, and I believe that Sammy provided the refreshments for this film.
Yes. Yeah. Did you read that, or or is that just something you just
I just made that up.
You just made that up, right? Yeah.
But he could be an extra.
He could. He may be out there doing some tequila shots in the background.
Maybe he was playing Menelaus, actually, now when I think about it.
Because he's the Red Rocker.
That's right.
That's right.
There's a certain similarity. So what did you think about the casting of Menelaus?
Meh. That's all I can say about Menelaus.
The single biggest disappointment of the film for me.
Really?
I'll just lay it out there.
Oh, goodness. Why?
Well, no, it's not what you're thinking.
Okay.
Unless you're a mind reader. And that is how Hector kills Menelaus after the duel with Paris.
Right. Oh, okay.
It's completely contrary to the book.
Right. Why do you think they did that?
I have no idea.
My one
bad
thought.
Judgment.
My one thought is, we were talking about how it's such a massive cast of characters. Did this? Let's get rid of this guy so we don't have to deal with him.
Yeah, but there are 400 extras. Couldn't you have killed off some of them?
But in terms of principles in the film, let's get rid of one of the principles so we don't have to kind of explain his arc.
I see.
We're already at 2 hours. Get rid of somebody.
Okay,
right.
so Patroclus is killed off, true to the story.
Yes.
Menelaus is killed off, false to the story.
Right.
Ajax is killed off, also swinging this giant mace.
Is he killed off?
Yes, he is. Hector kills him.
I missed that part. Mm-hmm. I mean, and Ajax his depiction is kind of this, like almost Cyclops.
Yes,
right?
that's a good point.
A big kind of grunting.
He's a combination of Diomedes, who's totally missing from the film.
Right.
Good at the war cry, bad at appearing on screen, apparently. And he's a combination of Diomedes and the actual Ajax.
Yeah.
But Hector dispatches him.
Oh, I missed that. But I guess I just want to get rid of him so we don't have to deal with him.
You seem to be very comfortable with the choices the filmmakers made.
I wouldn't say I'm
Kill
comfortable.
Off the principles,
I'm trying to
remove the gods.
I'm trying to think from Benioff's and Petersen's point of view.
Okay.
They say this is just, we got to tie up this loose thread. This serves the film. We can focus on Achilles. We can focus on Briseis. We can focus on Agamemnon. And the audience doesn't have to worry about, Menelaus it's his wife. Shouldn't he be more, angry and more present in this film? Well, let's just kill him off.
Yeah.
Right.
So you would have been happy with an alternative ending, maybe. The Trojans win in your version?
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
I kind of resent how you're kind of putting words in my mouth right now. But I don't like it, but I think that's probably what it was. It was really just a practical choice.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So before we digressed, we were coming up to the question of the very lovely scene where Achilles is driving his chariot to the walls of Troy. He's alone on this plain, right? And stops his chariot before the walls, Troy's closed, and he starts shouting Hector, right?
Right.
Hector.
Yeah.
Hector.
It's a nice moment.
No, I'm not done. Hector.
One more time?
No, I think
that's it. Okay.
And he goes on and on like this.
Right.
And finally, Hector, Eric Bana, emerges from the walls of Troy for their single combat.
Right. Eric Bana, I thought Paris too, but it made more sense with Orlando Bloom as Paris. Too pretty.
Yeah.
And he kind of mullety.
Definitely.
Yes.
That's the word I was looking for.
Right.
When I was watching the behind the scenes, listening to his Australian accent, right, which then morphs into a mostly British accent.
Yeah, mostly.
In the film. That must have been really difficult for those actors to do.
Yeah.
Because you have the American Pitt, right, with a kind of British accent.
Was he attempting an accent?
I don't know. It came in and out.
It was kind of... Yeah, it was kind of a touch of British accent, then more kind of Indiana.
Definitely in and out.
Yeah,
very much like the popularity of this podcast, I might say. It just comes and goes.
Right.
So he comes out, and the preparation for the movie, the behind the scenes. Apparently, Eric Bana couldn't ride a horse.
Really?
Yes. And then he says, after being on the set, Orlando and I used to go down along the beach and ride our stallions after hours. It was great. We, became such great horsemen. And so then they face off, right?
Yeah.
Hector and Achilles, and they have, it's a pretty good mano a mano kind of duel, right? There's some nice stylistic elements. Apparently, as you read the comments for the movie on YouTube and other places, people loved it.
Really?
Yeah, this was Rob Roy level man-to-man combat, or kind of like Jedi stuff. They really loved it.
You're talking about this specific scene?
This scene.
Really?
Yep. People thought it was great. And audiences seemed to love it. Jeff, why don't we talk about box office boffo for a minute?
Oh, it was a hit, right? You dug up some numbers. So, domestic box office in America, $133+ million gross. Worldwide, all told, just shy of a $500 million.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is 2004 money.
Right.
I don't know what that would be today.
I don't know.
A bit more.
Maybe less.
I'm sure it had a massive budget. You know, if you're doing on location in Malta, Morocco, and Mexico,
right?
It's I'm sure it cost probably well over $100 million to make. I mean, I don't know even what Pitt got paid.
Well, plus insuring the actors because Pitt apparently injured his Achilles heel in the filming of this.
Oh, I did hear about that.
True story.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, the wonderful irony.
Yeah.
So, but it was a hit. But my sense, thinking back then, it kind of, I remember kind of it had this brief kind of flame of popularity, and then it kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
And I talk to my students today, you know, I was 16 years on, and I poll, you know, how many of you have seen Troy?
Hardly anybody.
Maybe 2 out of 30.
Right.
And
I had a somewhat similar experience because when I lecture on classical myth, you know, in the classroom, I try to bring in some occasional pop culture items just to try to, you know, I just try to keep it real.
Yeah.
You know,
right. It's so hard to do.
Be a little relevant. And they look up at the screen and they don't have any idea who
Yeah.
these people are.
Exactly right. That's a kind of a dual function of, you know, of our age.
Oh,
but,
sure.
But also, I think, you know, pop culture today is so fragmented that even the
rapid,
the kids aren't even watching and listening to the same things anymore.
Kids these days.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Today's episode is brought to you by
The Moss Method.
Moss Method. What's the Moss Method?
Well, the Moss Method, as I like to say, is the best online way to learn ancient Greek.
Has nothing to do with lawn care.
No, it does not.
Okay.
Yeah. A rolling stone gathers no Greek, as I typically like to say.
Nice, yeah.
If you want to learn Greek, if you've been enchanted and entranced by our discussion of all things Homeric, then you can access these poems directly by learning Greek.
And how does this work?
Well, you first need to go to mossmethod.com, and you need to watch the video in which I explain some of the features of the program. Then you need to enroll, right? Yep. It's an attainable price, $299 for 40 lessons.
That's a bargain.
It is. Not only 40 lessons, thanks for noticing, Jeff. Not only 40 lessons, but you get 40 homework assignments, all of which I grade, 40 videos. You get the Greek quick sheets, which show you how to learn the Greek language. You get quizzes, exams, and most of all, you get constant access to my own expertise and knowledge. I guide you step by step through the process of learning this gorgeous, beautiful, dare I say it, Homeric language.
And this works? People have learned Greek this way?
All over the world, people are studying. Not as many as I'd like, obviously, but all over the world, people are studying Greek, and they're learning how to approach Homer, Plato, Aristotle.
That sounds great. Check it out at mossmethod.com.
That's right, mossmethod.com.
We should rewind a bit and talk about, we haven't really talked about Brad Pitt as Achilles. And so we've talked about some of these characters that we liked or didn't like, but what did you think about Brad Pitt as Achilles?
It's hard to think of someone who could have played the part better, because he wasn't that famous yet.
He wasn't?
I mean, 2004, it was after Fight Club, something like that, a movie I haven't seen, but apparently it was great. I don't know.
It was all right.
Yeah. He wasn't that famous yet. These are the pre-Angelina Jolie days.
Okay, so he wasn't tabloid guy yet.
No, I think he had been in A Plot Runs Through It. What's that movie?
Oh, A River Runs Through It.
Yeah,
yes.
I think he was in that one with the Folgers can and the fly fishing.
Yeah, right.
But no, I don't think he was that popular, that famous yet. And I don't think he's a bad actor.
No.
I liked him in the Ocean's 11 and 12, etc. movies.
Yeah.
And some other movie that I really liked him in. So, I think he was fine.
Yeah, I think in some ways kind of a natural choice for, I mean, he tops the lists of the, Mr. Handsome. Mm-hmm. And so...
Present company excluded.
Oh, of course, exactly right.
And could they have cast Harrison Ford?
He would have been too old.
He'd have been in everything by then.
Yeah, exactly.
He was in Raiders of the Lost Ark #7 by that point. If I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. I think he's gearing up to do another.
Not possible.
Raiders. He's 76. I want to say.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to think of someone else who could have done it.
Right. I don't know.
Viggo Mortensen was in the Lord of the Rings movies about the same time.
Yeah.
He'd have been cast well in that.
Yes, he would.
I liked him in the horse movie Hidalgo. That was quite interesting.
Yeah. But he plays Achilles in many ways in the way that he speaks, kind of monotone. He kind of keeps it short, which in some ways I think is true to the material. To the material.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What about the casting in the female roles? What about Diane Kruger as Helen or Saffron Burrows playing Andromache?
They didn't really give them much to do.
Yeah.
But to kind of, weep and worry.
Also un-Homeric.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because Penelope's no wilting violet.
No. And so I think they tried to give that kind of that meat of that character to Briseis.
Yeah, she got most of it.
But Helen Dancre didn't have much to do. Andromache had even less to do in the film. And I think part of my problem, I did not buy the Helen Paris romance at all.
No.
I think this is a place where putting the gods in would have helped. If you see them more as the playthings of Aphrodite.
Well, yes.
Right?
Yeah, because their romance isn't that plausible in the epic itself, but you have the presence of Aphrodite.
Yeah.
Making sure they love each other.
Right, exactly.
She commands it.
Yeah,
that makes it plausible.
Right. So I didn't buy the romance at all. I thought there was no reason those two people should be together.
Right.
In any shape or form.
Now, another glaring omission, right? So glaring inclusions for me were the death of Ajax and the death of Menelaus.
Yep.
The most glaring omission was, what is Priam's wife's name in the tradition?
Hecuba.
Hecuba.
Yeah.
Where was Hecuba?
She was missing.
Totally absent.
Totally absent.
The Queen of Troy is not there at all.
Just to kind of keep it manageable. Just, we can't just have another character. What are we going to...
You're carrying water again for Petersen and
if she had
Benioff,
been in the
aren't you?
film, what would there have been for her to do except by stand by Priam and worry a lot?
Well...
Right? Worrying, whittling, wickering.
It works for me.
It works for you?
She's an important character in the story. You just cut her out. There's lots of room on set. There are a number of anonymous people who line the table when the men are having councils of war.
This is true.
Both in Troy and when they're at that drunken party in Sparta.
Yeah.
So would it be so much to put in Hecuba?
How long do you want this movie to be? Seriously, is there a director's cut that's like 9 hours long?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah. But you're right. It is, from a source material point of view, it's a glaring omission.
It just strikes me as strange. Helen Mirren would have made a great Hecuba.
Yeah. I could see that. That'd have been perfect.
Yeah.
Peter O'Toole as Priam gives it some kind of old Hollywood gravitas.
Definitely.
Right.
And he delivers all of his lines with just incredible gravitas and authority.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
But we didn't mention also the killing of Agamemnon. Briseis becomes Clytemnestra.
Yes, you're right.
So she's Briseis, she's Cassandra, she's Clytemnestra, she's hiding the dagger and kills Agamemnon.
Right.
And there too, I thought that was more, it's an American Hollywood film. The bad guy has to get...
Wait, Agamemnon dies in this movie too?
Don't you remember at the end?
No.
I
think I had fallen asleep by that point. My face, face down in the popcorn bowl.
So Achilles is running around Troy looking for Briseis, right? Because that's the other love story going on.
Because he genuinely loves her in the movie. I think he genuinely loves her in the book too.
Yeah.
You get that impression.
And when she goes back to Troy and she does it, she's unwilling, right? She's drawn to Achilles. A little bit,
right.
I don't know, some Stockholm syndrome going on there.
That word's even hard to pronounce.
It is.
Much less to live through.
So, moving on. So Achilles is looking for all over Troy, right? He wants to find his girl. And Agamemnon finds her first. And do you remember this? But she has the dagger.
I do.
She stabs him in the neck. And so we get rid of him. So Menelaus dies at Troy. Agamemnon dies at Troy.
See, that's a total lack of self-control on the part of the filmmakers, I just have to say. If you're going to try to put everything in, tell the whole story, you don't have to tell the after story of what happens back in Mycenae, right?
No, I suppose you don't. But I think this is a popcorn movie.
Okay.
Right? This is geared towards who's the target audience? 15-year-old boys. And it's kind of a classic Hollywood simple morality tale. Agamemnon, he's the biggest jerk in the film, and he's got to get his. So
okay. So let's fast forward to the end then a little bit.
Okay.
We have the part where Brian Cox, Agamemnon, standing in the middle of Troy.
Yes.
After they sneak in with the horse and so forth.
Right.
And he says, well, why don't we roll that clip, the Let It Burn clip.
Let's play it.
Let it burn! Let Troy burn! Burn it! Up and around! Burn it! Burn Troy! Burn Troy! I promise you, brother! I promise you! Burn it! Burn it! Up and around!
Well, that's some high drama there. Troy in blazing ruins.
Big drama.
Yeah. Now, as the movie limps off to its conclusion, Jeff, I understand we have some awards to give out.
We do. That's right. We got some categories here that we can. I think we'll both kind of throw around some nominees.
Right. And what are these called? Are these the Grammys, the Oscars, the Dundies?
I think these are the Illies.
The Illies.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The Iliad. The Illies. Yes.
So who do you have down for the Tiresias Award, the most obnoxious character?
Ooh, I thought when I was going into this, I would say Orlando Bloom.
Paris wins by a landslide.
I'm gonna. I'm going to go with Patroclus.
Okay.
Or Patroclus.
Right.
How
about both?
Pick your poison. Well, I just thought he was just so miscast and so boyish and so amateur and unbelievable that I found that obnoxious.
Boy band kind of.
Very boy bandy. Exactly right.
What's the current one that's so popular? Not NSYNC. That was 50 years ago. But
One Direction.
That's
I think
right.
even that is kind of passed on.
Okay.
But yeah,
Something like
he
that.
He could have stepped in. He could have replaced one of the guys in One Direction.
I'm with you on this one.
Yeah.
I remember really disliking Legolas in this movie, but then when I considered the material that Orlando had to work with, we're on a first name basis, and I watched the behind the scenes, I began to develop sympathy for the actor.
Oh, really?
It's a hard part to play.
It is.
He's a mix of cowardice and handsomeness.
Exactly.
Cravenness. I think he did all right.
And they tried to make him a little bit more noble.
They did.
You torn between these passions and his love for his city. It didn't work.
So Patroclus gets the Tiresias Award.
From my point of view.
Okay.
Right.
How about the Procrustes Award?
Oh, the scene that should have been cut.
The scene that should have been cut.
Yes. When I wrote this, I wrote this down in my notes. It's the scene between Paris and Priam. They have kind of this. They're sitting by the fountain, late at night, and they're having kind of this heart to heart.
Yes.
Remember this? And he says something to his father like, "You love every inch of Troy, every rock, every blade of grass."
That's your Peter O'Toole? That's your Orlando Bloom.
Yes. Every
Sorry,
grain
Orlando.
of sand, and it was so overwrought and horrible. But we didn't need that scene.
I think that's a good point. I think a good competitor for the Procrustes Award is definitely the little interchange between Paris and Aeneas. At the end of the movie. What's your name, boy?
Right.
Aeneas.
Right.
Take the sword of Troy.
Aeneas also looks very boy bandy.
Yes.
Right. So,
and he's a major character in the story.
Right, exactly.
But not in the movie.
No, Paris has no idea who he is.
Right.
And he said, here's this precious ancient heirloom.
Right.
Take it, kid.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Totally unnecessary.
Totally unnecessary, right.
How about the worst performance? Who gets the Illy for the worst performance, you'll never work on this battlefield again?
Boy, I think here's where I'd give it to Orlando Bloom. I think maybe he just didn't have that much to work with. I mean, you said you found some sympathy for him. And
it's a tough role to play.
It's a tough role to play, but he didn't play it. I got to give it to him. Yep. So I found Patroclus the most obnoxious, but I thought the worst performance was Orlando Bloom. What's your take there?
Diane Kruger.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a beautiful woman, obviously, but there's none of the fire of Helen in her.
No, that's true.
Helen is a commanding character. She's the daughter of Zeus, after all.
Yeah.
And so they captured well in the movie the fact that she's somewhat of a victim of fate.
Yeah.
And she's a reluctant prisoner or princess of Troy. Helen of Sparta, Peter O'Toole says. No, says Orlando, Helen of Troy.
Right.
But she doesn't portray any Homeric spirit.
No, that's
whatsoever.
true. So I think a good case for both of those. I think I would sum it up by saying is that Orlando Bloom had a lot to work with and just didn't, and Diane Kruger didn't have much to work with, and so she couldn't. So yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And what about all the battle scenes?
Oh, the bag. Yeah, I thought that was probably my favorite part of the film. Right, some of those overhead shots where the lines of battle are clashing.
Right.
I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, no pacts between lions and men.
Yeah,
says Achilles right before the duel.
Yeah, exactly. I did not see this film on the big screen. I didn't go to the theater. And those battle scenes that I was sitting there watching at my TV thinking,
right.
this would look great on an IMAX screen.
Yeah, I was watching it on a tablet.
On a tablet.
Yeah,
right.
even smaller.
It's not the same.
But even so, the gore stood out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to say that Carnegie was macabre. Absolutely.
Would you say that at one point Apollo's Temple even became Carnegie Hall? Oh man!
Now who's coming up with the bad puns?
Brutal.
Yeah.
Man. Have we got any more awards? That more or less wraps it up, doesn't it?
It pretty much does. I want to say one more thing before we give it our gustatory departure.
Okay, yeah, please.
The etymology of the name Homer, there's two different etymologies, right? The one is homeros, that he's a hostage. I'm sure that's how many people felt while they were watching the film.
Yes.
But the other etymology of Homer's name is ha-me-haron, he who does not see.
Right.
Yeah, so there were points in the movie where I was praying that the gods would make me like that. I didn't have to witness certain aspects of this.
You would be blind.
That's right.
Yes, if a Homer were alive today, he'd be glad he was blind.
Exactly. So now, Jeff, you have our gustatory parting shot.
Yes, we're going to end with a quote from Charles de Gaulle, the French premier. who said about his own country, apparently, how can you govern a country which has 246 varieties of cheese? See you next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.